Strengthening Your Career Within Your Organization. Thank you to Marcus and Millichap for sponsoring the 2009 NAIOP webinar series. My name is Allison Murphy, and I will be your host today. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and all participant lines will be muted during this broadcast. Before we get started, I would like to go over a couple of things regarding the tools on your control panel. To minimize or expand the control panel, please click the arrow. If you haven't already done so, please indicate how you will be hearing today's presentation. If you will be listening over the phone, please click Use Telephone and dial the phone number, access code, and PIN number shown. If you will be listening through your computer speakers, please click Use Mic and Speakers. Today's presentation will last up to 90 minutes. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please type your question in the questions box. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. To introduce you to this questions box, please use that box on your control panel to type in your answer to this question. How many people, including yourself, are viewing today's presentation at your location? Once again, using the questions box on the control panel, please tell us how many people, including yourself, are viewing today's presentation at your location. Thank you for your answers. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's speaker, Rebecca York, Vice President of Commercial Real Estate with Mercantile Bank. Rebecca, we're ready for you to begin.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the audience. Today we're going to talk about strengthening your career within your organization. When we first conceived of this idea, it was almost 18 months ago. The economy has changed significantly in the last year and a half. So today's presentation will be in one part about strengthening your career for today's organization, but in large part also about strengthening your career for the organization to come, whether that's within your current company as it rebounds, grows, expands, investigates new opportunities, or whether you may end up reinventing yourself. I was in the commercial real estate sector in brokerage and development and have had this opportunity to reinvent myself in the banking field. And so we're all kind of working through these questions over the next 6 months to 2 years. Let's get right into today's presentation. Traditionally, employment, as our parents and grandparents and their parents taught them, was working predominantly for one company for the majority of our lives. And that meant that employers had a stable and loyal base of employees who had grown up in the business and knew the business intuitively and had seen different life cycles and different capital cycles and different sales cycles of those businesses. Employees expected their company would provide pretty much cradle-to-grave services, including health care, retirement planning, sometimes tuition subsidies for their children. And employers built this into their cost of business as just their cost of having employees. Employees worked their way up. We paid our dues. Seniority mattered a lot. And employers believed that time and service was one way of measuring experience and knowledge. And finally, employees tended to specialize in their job. They may work their way up the ladder over time and have different jobs, but the way you earned your stripes within this type of model was to be really, really good at the one thing you were doing at that time. And this worked well for employers because there was a great deal more stability in business cycles in the past prior to the advent of, well, the fax machine and then the internet and cell phones. As the pace of business has increased, this model has become increasingly less applicable. Let's move on to a polling question. Allison?
Okay. Yes, I'll go ahead and launch the poll. Okay, it should now be on your screen. The question is, when thinking of your friends and family, how long have they worked at their current job? 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 7 to 9 years, or more than 10 years? Please go ahead and click the button to the left of the answer which you have selected. Once again, the question is, when thinking of your friends and family, how long have they worked at their current job? 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 7 to 9 years, or more than 10 years. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the poll. And here's your results. Looks like 4 to 6 years is the highest answer.
Terrific, thank you. Well, this brief poll, informal poll that we just completed matches what the Bureau of Labor Statistics also tells us, which is that over the last 12 years, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has taken a more in-depth snapshot of people's work habits. And here we have a somewhat complicated graph that talks about different age groups and how long they tend to stay in a position with a employer. So how long is your longevity with one employer? The upshot of this graph is that for the past 12 years, for the past 12 years, the majority of people over the age of 25, meaning people who have kind of found a career that they're pursuing, have only stayed with one employer for about 5 years. So increasingly, the employment model of finding one employer and staying there for the majority of your career is not applicable for employers or employees. Let's talk about the consequences of that change. I'd say that the modern view of employment is a little bit more like the stopwatch instead of the gold watch. Employers have a more complex and diverse workforce. Employees have to take on more of the burden of planning and paying for our own health care, retirement, education. You'll see more 401k rollovers. It's not as likely you'll have a defined benefit contribution, or I'm sorry, a defined benefit pension plan. You'll have a defined contribution pension plan. But some other more important changes than just benefits have taken place in the workforce, one of which is that employees increasingly are focusing on capability as much as or more than seniority. It's what skills and experiences you're bringing as much as it is how long you've been with the company or how long you've been in service. Also, employees do specialize in specific jobs, but increasingly we have to be cross-trained across multiple functions in order to do our jobs well or understand how our piece of the job fits in to the larger workflow of our company. I think one of the most interesting implications of this change is that businesses are now thinking of themselves as machines that are evolving to meet the challenges of the workplace and what the market's demanding. And that means that companies look at employees a little bit more like cogs who have a special ability that must be able to be switched out or replaced. I think our economy is working through the implication of that in today's economic downturn, as lots of people are laid off because their cog is kind of no longer needed for a particular type of work or a particular company, a typical industry or service area. One of the more important implications of this is that companies are going to have to start being more comfortable with the idea that employees will leave a company and come back. Especially smaller and mid-sized companies may not have the breadth or depth of job positions to train people from entry level to top leadership within that company. And so the idea of having someone come in, work in a company for about 5 years on average, go to a new company, learn a new skill set, and then boomerang back to their original employer or their earlier employer will become increasingly common as businesses are trying to adapt to this new reality. Part of this also is a change for employees as we increasingly feel less secure about our jobs. 50% of Americans who are employed full or part-time are completely satisfied with their job security today. And that's one part economic conditions, but it's also one part a reflection of this change in the overall view of what employment and employability meant. So traditionally, we've looked at employment. Do I have a job? Can I get a job? What is my job? Looking forward, we're worried more about employability. Do I have the right skills, abilities, aptitudes, not only for the job I currently have, but for the next job that I'll be looking for? Employment in the older model is I have a defined job. Employability, and this is more crucial than ever in today's economy, looks a little bit more like I have a defined job and have a job description, but where I really get recognized or get kudos is when I go the extra mile or do something above and beyond my job description. Employment used to mean that my boss will tell me what I need to learn or improve to keep my job. In fact, you might even have gotten an education plan in prior iterations. But today, the employee needs to take on more of the burden of figuring out what we need to know and figure out how we can learn that new skill, whether that's outside our work hours or using the resources that are available to us within our firms. Employment, certainly for my parents and my grandparents, meant that they didn't have to worry about their next job as long as they were good at their current job. But I think that that's an older model that's been replaced with an idea that the skills and professional growth that will get me my next job, those skills and growth are what will protect my current job. And so it's that idea that I'm evolving as an employee and I have to take more accountability for that. Let's take another polling question.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Do you think that most companies have formal programs to facilitate employee career growth, have formal policies but not formal programs, or do not have formal policies or programs? Once again, do you think that most companies have formal programs to facilitate employee career growth, have formal policies but not formal programs, or do not have formal policies or programs? Please go ahead and click the button to the left of the answer. Okay, and here's your results. Looks like 67% do not have formal policies or programs.
The results of our informal poll mirror the changes that are going on in the economy, especially to the extent that employees are increasingly responsible for finding their own areas of training and growth. Let's talk a little bit about today's reality in terms of employment and employability. I think a lot of us are concerned about protecting our current job. Where are we today? And that includes strengthening our position within our organization and strengthening our ability to add value to our organization. So I'm going to go back one slide. Sorry about that. The obvious, and these really are obvious, but in today's economy sometimes a little bit more challenging. Showing up with enthusiasm. Be as enthusiastic as possible about the jobs you do. Last week I spent 20 hours hole punching and photocopying. Not my most exciting part of my job, but I'm enthusiastic about having a job, and I'm enthusiastic about making things better and more organized in my environment, because I know that when the economy comes back, that organizational discipline and that investment today will pay off in the future. So I'm trying to find the silver lining in everything I'm doing, even hole punching and photocopying. Other obvious points: make your boss look good, or at the very, very least, try not to let him or her look bad. And the one that I think is most challenging when things are discouraging in the economy is trying to dress for the job you want. Even if you're feeling like today, I'm not going to see anyone, I don't really have to do anything important, I could get away with dressing down a little, I'm just going to be in my office. Sometimes dressing for the job we want helps us in our own mind frame get excited about getting in there and fighting our best fight. Let's talk about some of the obvious but easily forgotten. Your mom often said, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. This is not about processes or problems within your company that you want to diplomatically point out and say, hey, is this an area we can improve, or how can I help fix this? This point really goes specifically to other people, people you work with, vendors, clients, colleagues, even former colleagues. Just really don't say anything impolitic. And I find this is one of the hardest things to restrain in the workplace, because everyone loves to talk about the news, about the office. Some people call it office gossip. Sometimes people call it just, keeping up with what's going on. And I want to remind you that while everyone loves to hear those things, everyone's kind of afraid that they're going to get on that rumor mill for anything at all. And so really, truly, the best thing you can do is always say something neutral or nice. The other one that's really obvious but easily forgotten is don't resist change. And that's something that's happened a lot in the last year, a lot of change for all of us. But when senior management says things are going to change, no matter how much we resist, we're going to get smashed by that boulder rolling downhill. So instead, try to get in front of it and embrace with grace. And lastly, and this is the hardest thing for me in today's economy, is try not to take things personally. So cultivate relationships and hobbies and interests that reaffirm your value outside of your job and outside of your career. Because inevitably we all have a bad day, and when that happens, you want to have something to fall back on and say, hey, I'm valuable, I've got something to offer outside of what I do 9 to 5, or 8 to 8, or 7 to 9, whatever your hours are. And the not so obvious, the things that are really going to help you strengthen your career for today's economy, and more importantly, get ready for the career that's yet to come. A lot of times people think that we need to work harder or work smarter, both good pieces of advice, but it's also about being able to do more things for your company, so that if someone in senior management says, you know, I only need half a person to do this job and half a person to do that job, you'll be more likely to be secure because you can do both of those jobs and keep your position. If you find yourself feeling insecure or worried, or you're seeing signals that your job might be phased out or might be in danger, never give personal reasons to keep your job, like I really need this job for this reason, or I really need the job for that reason. While we all appreciate the human appeal, ultimately that will work against you. Instead, you want to defend your job based on skills, capabilities, contributions, and if all of that fails, based on your future potential to contribute to the company, so that you can preserve your position and opportunity to play a role in that new growth. And finally, you might be bored at times in your job. You're worried, stressed, overworked, definitely feeling underutilized if you're photocopying and hole punching, and sometimes underappreciated. And I know we all feel that way at different times in our work. Today's economy, no exception. But your boss probably feels the same way. And sometimes one of the ways to strengthen your career within your organization is to recognize that, either implicitly, don't take things so personally, or try to cut your boss a break, or explicitly, you know, if you have that relationship with your boss or with your colleagues, to say, hey, I know this was a tough day for you, or hey, I know this is a tough time, and form those bonds of support that will really help strengthen your career. Let's try our last polling question.
Okay, the question is, if your company offered you a chance to increase your odds of being promoted, but required an additional 20 hours of work a week, would you be thrilled to be selected and sign up immediately, accept the offer but wonder if you will regret the extra hours, or politely decline in order to maintain more work-life balance? Once again, the question is, if your company offered you a chance to increase your odds of being promoted, but required an additional 20 hours of work a week, you would be thrilled to be selected and sign up immediately, accept the offer but wonder if you will regret the extra hours, or lastly, politely decline in order to maintain more work-life balance. Okay, there's your results.
Wow, those are great results. And it's interesting that the majority of people did not vote sign up immediately. The majority of people voted maybe sign up, but wonder and then decline to maintain more work-life balance. That's awesome to know. Let's talk a little bit about some of the consequences of that poll and what that means for the next job. I think the most important thing about your next job is that it's going to be exactly like your current job. I can pretty much promise you that. But it's also going to be completely different because the economy is changing, companies are changing, and hopefully we're changing and growing as well. Let's look at some of the facets of that change. Your next job could be a job you create at your current company by identifying a new opportunity. And in fact, today, right now, is the very, very, very best time for you to help your company identify new opportunities. I was listening to a discussion by a strategic consultant who said that small and medium businesses were kind of like race cars on a racetrack, racing against really large, powerful cars, which in this analogy were the established businesses. And when times are good, you can kind of imagine that that racetrack is like a straightaway, and the more powerful cars that have more resources and are bigger, they can really overpower and go far, go fast. But on the turns, which are times of recession, strategically, small and medium businesses have the advantage because they can maneuver more quickly, and they can actually gain. And you can be part of that victory by identifying new opportunities at your company. And some questions you can ask yourself are, what are the problems that your company faces, and how can you help solve them? How could you find a solution to an everyday irritation at your company, like managing data or managing clients, or what about a new product that hasn't been sold by your company yet but is really needed by the marketplace? And a bigger question I would ask you is, we all have things about our jobs that irritate us and we could have a perfect solution, but we sometimes fail to ask that last question, which is, how does my solution save money or increase revenue? And if you can answer all three of those questions, what's broken in my company or my industry? How could it be better? How could we improve it? How would I do that? That's part 2. What's broken? How would I do it? Part 3. How does that save money or increase revenue? Guess what? You have a fabulous business idea that you can sell inside your company and create a new division, a new position, and growth for you. Some other opportunities about your next job might be at a new company but with your current colleagues. And we've seen that a lot in this economic downturn, that people use their existing relationships to identify colleagues who they want to establish new businesses or want to establish new products and services that can be sold. Reputation matters more than ever, and our earlier conversation about businesses looking at employees as alumni and coming back into the workforce of the original or earlier business, this is where you really see this as being applicable. You might think that your job today is not a place of tremendous growth, but look around you, because that future growth could be inside your business or with your current colleagues in another business or in an offshoot. And remember that today's colleagues will be tomorrow's employers. So even if there are things about your job, hole punching or photocopying, that are not the most exciting, try to impress your colleagues with your ability to work hard and your overall great attitude about doing even the somewhat mundane work. Some other places that your next job will be exactly the same, and this is one that I recently faced, is that you could be working at the same company, but it's owned by someone new. It's owned through a sale, a takeover. And being acquired is very, very scary, but it can actually be a really good thing, because you can have new opportunities for promotion, new opportunities for training, you get to meet new people, and usually in an acquisition, the acquiring company brings capital and resources that provides more security. But being acquired is like moving into someone else's house, and their rules rule. So that's one of the hardest parts I had about the acquisition phase is we were all used to doing something a certain way, our way. And upon acquisition, our way was no longer the way. And I think that goes back to the change is inevitable and embrace with grace. That gave us an opportunity to learn some new ways to do our work more efficiently and with greater productivity. Finally, if you find that your company is going to be acquired, remember that being a good fit culturally, fitting in, will be as important as your actual skills and experience. It'll be a two-part equation. Your next job might be completely different. You could be with a new company, one you haven't considered before. For example, if you worked with a big company, you might think small. And for example, if you really love your current employer and you're sitting in your office now saying, I really, really love where I work, but there isn't a lot of room for me to be promoted in this current context, maybe you want to take a short stint in your career. If you work for a big company, think small. Work for a smaller company, get a different set of skills, have some other experiences, and then you can bring that back to your current company with a new skill set and new things to offer. If you work for a smaller company, go big and sell yourself as entrepreneurial and nimble. If you've worked for a small company, you know you've worn many hats at the same time, and that means that you are able to do more things than people who may have been in a bigger company, same job, were able to be exposed to. And finally, if you are wondering, how do I find that next job, or I have friends who are out of work or family who are out of work and they're looking for a job, how do I help them? Watch for mergers and acquisitions. When you see the news that two companies are getting married or someone's being taken over, new jobs usually appear in that context within 2 to 6 months as companies are reorganizing that they need to fill new management or new leadership roles. Your next job could be really, really different in that it might be an industry you've never thought of before. I have a number of friends in the commercial real estate field who have gone into teaching. and they're teaching at the local university in finance and commercial real estate, and they're reinventing themselves using their love and passion and experiences to give that to a new class of people who want to join the commercial real estate field in the hopes that the economy will rebound and we're going to go back to a normalized equilibrium of supply and demand in commercial real estate. And these new professors are loving the experience to share what they know, but also to think about what it is they've done in their career in a new light. And one of them said to me, I'm going to be so much better as a developer now that I've taught these courses. It's not that I didn't already know these things, I've just thought about them differently. And so that opportunity to reinvent yourself in a new career can be very, very powerful. Oddly enough, if you have friends or family who are looking for jobs, areas of economic distress have produced a tremendous number of new opportunities. And with government stimulus money, you'll see a lot of new growth in new technologies like green energy, solar panels, and also places where the government's investing for future growth, information technology and other places that, well, if you read the recent stimulus bill, you'll see a lot of opportunity for research there. And most importantly, sometimes, no matter how much we love our job or our colleagues, we know it's time to find a new job. So if you find yourself in that position, or if you have a friend who's finding themselves in that position, remember you market yourself as a specialist because most companies have a specific need. Decide what you want. Research what's out there, and then adjust for that gap. You know, what is it that you really want to do? What are the jobs that are out there? And could you take a different job for a period? If not, what are you willing to give up? Would you move to a new area? Could you take a lesser title? Would you accept money or money and compensation in a different package than straight pay? And finally, a lot of us find ourselves in careers that we really, really enjoy. But if you are forced to reinvent yourself, it's a great time to go back to the drawing board and say, what did you want to be when you were 6 or 10 or 20? And is that really a job for you today? I wanted to be an astronaut. When I found myself facing reinvention at 35, being an astronaut really wasn't a continuing option for me. But if you thought to yourself, I really wanted to be a developer, and I was a broker, and I have an opportunity to use my brokerage skills in helping banks and financial institutions develop and position their properties for sale, that might be a perfect opportunity for you to explore something you've always been interested in. In real estate, we all know that location is paramount, but in career development, the adage is it's all about your network. So it's not just who you know, it's how you know them. You know, is it a friend of a friend or is it your friend? If you've used LinkedIn, you'll get a really great opportunity to see those relationships in action. So even if you're feeling like now's not the best time to build your network, strangely enough, people have more time on their hands, more willingness to talk about what they do, what they want to do next, more willingness to build those networks. And this is a great time for you to lean on those networks and explore what kinds of job opportunities are out there, what skills would I need to be ready for them, how can I help create value inside my company today, how can I help position my company to move ahead as the economy recovers. And these are questions you can explore with people in your network who may have different perspectives or experiences and might be able to help you see your issues through new eyes. And finally, if you find yourself in a position of reinvention, you might think about starting your own company. Recessions are arguably the best time to start a business. You'll see some really famous names on your screen of companies that were founded during recessions. A number of people I know were forced to reinvent themselves and have actually started their own businesses, and their former businesses were their first and predominant client because that original company was forced to have a layoff but still needed those services to be provided on occasion. And so my friends have gone out, created new companies, and their very first source of income was their old employer. And that's a way to maintain that relationship and help provide value to that original employer while still allowing the former employee to find an opportunity for growth of their own. Regardless of whether you're in your current job, your new job, it's going to be the same you. And that's how it's the exact same job you have now, because you're going to be the same person. So remember that the skills and attitudes that are going to get you your next job, well, those are the skills and attitudes that are going to protect your current job and give you the opportunity to decide what works best for you. So if you can sell yourself to another company, you definitely should be able to stay sold to your current company. I want to open the floor to any kinds of questions that people may have.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. We've gone ahead and reserved plenty of time for people to ask questions if they have them. We're going to go ahead and begin our question and answer segment. Your participation is key to the success of this webinar, so please don't be afraid to ask your questions. You may now ask your questions one of two ways, over the phone or through the web. To ask a question live over the phone, please click the raise hand icon on your control panel. Please note that in order for your question to be heard, you must have entered the audio PIN number when you arrived in today's session. If you are waiting in the queue to ask a question and decide you no longer wish to ask that question, simply click the raise hand icon again. You may also continue to use the questions box in the control panel of your screen. We'll go ahead and take a couple of questions from the questions box and then take any questions waiting in the phone queue. Okay, Rebecca, I do have a few questions waiting for you in the box. First question, someone would like to know, is this a good time to go back to school?
That's a great question, and the answer has two parts. If you find yourself in a position of reinvention, meaning that you think your current job is not sustainable, or you, a friend, someone has lost their current job, then going to school can be a really great safe haven as a short-term measure. But remember, you're trading off in terms of lost earning opportunity and potential student debt if you pursue that route as opposed to looking for a new job. I think the other part of that question is, and the more important part is, what will you get from that new degree? And this is a question that I'm extremely sensitive to because I have 3 degrees and I'm paying for 3 times the student debt. So there's definitely a trade-off between an investment in yourself and an investment in an advanced degree and that lost opportunity for earning, lost opportunity for additional work experience, and the cost of that actual education. So on the whole, what I'd say for most people is it's great to go to school if you know that this degree is going to lead to your ideal job opportunity or the next career phase you really want. If you're going to school only as a safe haven to bridge you between 2 career opportunities, I would say that that's probably a little bit more expensive of an option, and for the vast majority of people, when they look back on their life, they'll say that was probably not their best investment.
Okay, second question. I like my current company, but there is not much room to be promoted. Should I consider moving?
I like that question because I think a lot of us find ourselves at that point during some part of our career. And so I would respond in 3 parts. How much is your job the central focus of your life? If your job is extraordinarily important to your identity and you feel like you need to be promoted or progressing to feel satisfied with that part of your life, then yes, you might consider moving to a new position that gives you new opportunities and new growth. But I would caution you that you want to do that in a way that preserves your relationship with your current employer, because they may be your employer in the future. They will certainly be a colleague or a competitor in the future, and you want to maintain all the good things about that relationship as you're making that transition. I think a second element to that question is, if your job is not a primary or focal part of your happiness in your life, are there other things you can do outside of your work hours that bring more satisfaction or more happiness? And then you won't feel that sense of, my job isn't really progressing as fast as I wanted. You know, can you offset that with other parts of your life that do make you happier and stay in your current position and really enjoy all the things that are good about it today? And I think the final part of that answer, should I look, is maybe not. Today's economy is a great time to show longevity and a great time to dig in and find new opportunities within your current company. I know of 3 people who were frustrated that their current position didn't have enough opportunity for growth. Each of them looked at their company, came up with proposals for growth, proposals for new products, proposals for new opportunities for their company to explore, and have actually created the promotion they wanted. The position they currently have did not exist 6 months ago. And so the idea that if you want a promotion or you want growth, you have to leave is sometimes a false trade-off. Sometimes you can find the growth you want by creating it.
Okay, next question. As an employer, how can I help my employees feel needed, wanted, and necessary when I have no budget for raises or bonuses?
I work in a job now where I know that there's not going to be a raise or a bonus. And in fact, I took a significant pay cut to take this job. And I want to tell you this is one of the happiest places I've ever worked. And it has nothing to do with the financial rewards. It has everything to do with feeling, exactly like this question says, like I'm an important part of the team. So some of the things that my current boss does that helps everyone feel very excited, he says thank you. That sounds silly, but he sends me a thank you email about once every other week when he catches me doing something that he's particularly happy with. Other people on my team, and I often wonder if it's because he's showing that leadership or because we're kind of all in the same soup together, often come to each other and say, hey, thanks for that, or thanks for doing this, thanks for helping me out with that. Third, we have a set of really defined goals of accomplishments and benchmarks that we want to achieve. And we celebrate, both my boss and the rest of our team, how close we're getting to those benchmarks. Now, sometimes those benchmarks are losing less money. Sometimes those benchmarks are getting closer to break even in this specific metric. But we really celebrate that we're in this together and that we're accomplishing something. And it doesn't have to be about the rewards or the bonuses. So those are 3 things that are working in my current environment that I really appreciate.
Okay. Next question. I was recently laid off, and I'm losing energy to keep looking for a new job. How do I get motivated again?
And my guess is that this specific question doesn't apply particularly to anyone on the phone, but maybe to a friend or a family member who is experiencing this, and we all want to kind of know how to support those people. I was listening to another lecturer on economics and employment, and they said that 60% of the people who were currently looking for a job had been looking for so long that they were willing to take a new position that had significantly less pay or significantly fewer benefits. And I think that's the group of people that this question is referring to. If you're looking for so long, it's easy to get frustrated and start to wonder about your own value and your own ability. In the last recession in 2001, I actually found myself in this position. I had just graduated from business school. I found a very challenging environment to find a job. And so one of the ways I kept my spirits up was I volunteered. It was just 10 or 15 hours a week. It still left me plenty of time to do the job search and go to interviews, but it gave me a sense where I really felt competent and felt needed and felt like my showing up mattered, like I made a difference. And so anyone who finds themselves in the position of not having a lot of energy to keep, plugging away at what seems to be sometimes a very endless task, devoting some of your time to a task that clearly has benefits for other people can really help alleviate that sense of frustration.
Okay, I just want to remind everyone that if you do have a question, you can put that in the questions box, and we'll get to that as soon as we read the other questions. Rebecca, I have a question for you. It says, I love my company and I used to love my job, but recently I'm being asked to take on new responsibilities and duties that are really frustrating me. Should I speak up or sit tight?
As long as you're not being asked to do anything that's unethical or immoral or illegal, I think the general answer is sit tight. But the more nuanced answer is, if you have a great relationship with your boss, you might say, I find these new tasks challenging or difficult, or if you're hole punching, mundane. Are there other things I can add to kind of my work day to help keep variety so that I don't feel like I'm constantly doing things that I don't really enjoy? If you don't have that closer relationship with your boss and you're being delegated work that you don't feel is your highest and best use, or work that's actually just kind of frustrating you and making you feel unhappy about your work day. Search out opportunities to take on new projects that might help alleviate some of that sense of tedium. For example, in my recent job, I led the United Way campaign to raise money in a very challenging environment for the United Way. And that took up probably about 10 hours a week for a month. It was one more thing to juggle, but it actually made me feel really good about coming to work because I felt like when I showed up, it made a difference in other people's lives. And so that may be a way to trade off that parts of your job that you're increasingly frustrated with the new parts of your job that you may really enjoy.
Okay, we have another question in the questions box. It says, I wear many hats at my company, and I appreciate being given this opportunity because it makes me more valuable. However, I feel like I am not focusing enough on any one aspect, and I'm not sure how to do all my jobs more successfully. Do you have any suggestions?
I think this is the part where your network can be of most benefit to you, because sometimes when we're asked to do many different jobs that require different skill sets, or maybe a lot of new jobs that we've never seen before, having people within your network that you can call or rely on or even just talk to and bounce ideas off of can be really valuable. I have a friend who's a CPA, and so when I have to deal with accounting issues or accounting questions, I can research it myself, and that'll take 2 hours, or I can pick up the phone and call her and say, how does this work? How can I make this happen? Is this even allowed? And so this is one area. If you find yourself wearing a lot of different hats, or you find yourself being asked to do new jobs that you're not sure how they work, I would reach into your networks or use this as an opportunity to cultivate a network of people who can help you get better at each of those individual jobs that you're being required to do.
Okay, I'm currently looking for a job. Is it better for me to accept a job that has a lot less responsibility and pay than I'm used to, or better to hold out for a job that has more responsibility and that pays more?
I think the three parts of that question actually. First one, can you financially afford to hold out? And if the answer is you, your friend, somebody who is looking for a position, can financially afford to hold out, then this becomes a little bit more murky. But if you can't, take the job you have. If you can't afford to hold out and you're kind of debating between the pros and cons, I think the next question that you need to ask yourself is, which work environment do you think you'll enjoy better? And I know that sometimes that's a very difficult and subjective question to answer before you've gotten in there. But one thing you can do to gather more information is ask to have some informal meetings with your potential colleagues and get to know which place has a work culture where you feel like you're going to fit in and belong and enjoy yourself more. Because I can pretty much promise you that if you work somewhere that you feel like you belong and you enjoy what you're doing and your contributions matter, you will find growth and promotion because you'll be with people who appreciate what you're bringing, and you'll be excited and enthusiastic to come to work. And that combination will give you the growth you want, even if initially you're starting at a lower title or less money than you were expecting.
Okay, thank you. That's actually all the questions that we have for you today, Rebecca. Do you have any closing remarks or any additional comments?
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about what's an increasingly important conversation in the workplace, which is how to grow as individuals and humans, how to grow as an employee, and as the economy is rebounding, how to grow as corporations. And I think that those three components are fundamentally linked. And so as we as people are talking about growing, as we as employers are talking about developing new skill sets, and as our corporations are talking about coming back to a growth cycle, we'll find opportunities for all of us to benefit from creating a work environment that gives us a chance to try new things and develop new skills. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to explore that briefly today.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It was great to have you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, there are 2 housekeeping items I'd like to draw to your attention. First, at the end of this event, a brief 4-question survey will appear on your screen. Please take this opportunity to provide your feedback on this webinar. Second, if you have not already done so, use the questions box in the control panel. Please tell us how many people, including yourself, are viewing today's presentation at your location. Thank you. Don't miss our next webinar titled 2010 Investment Outlook, clearer skies ahead on January 14th. Make sure to register for NAIOP's special year-long pass. This special pass gives you 14 sessions on commercial real estate's hottest topics for only $495. For registration and a complete schedule of NAIOP's 2010 conferences, education, and events, visit www.naiop.org. Today's program is copyright 2009 by NAIOP with all rights reserved. Thank you. You may now disconnect.